Oh, my head. Where am I? Oh, my hands! My hands! You said these were strong sedatives. I don't know, maybe we need to up the dosage or something. He's a big boy after all. Be still, little. Can you give me a second? If you want to skip this skit, just skip to this part right down here. Thank you. Be still, it'll only be just a moment. Who are you? What do you want? It is with heavy heart and heavy balls I beckon thee, Tofu, principality of flesh, a sacrifice in hopes you grant me a boon of a successful YouTube channel. Hold on, a successful YouTube channel? That's what this is all about? Please don't interrupt the ritual. No, hold on. Why don't you just analyze movies or give the story breakdowns of video games? You don't have to do any of this. That's too much effort. The unspeakable is our only hope now. Now rest. Tofu, principality of flesh, I offer you a vegetarian whose lips have not touched flesh. Yo, one second. I'm not a vegetarian. I think you got the wrong guy. Well, I mean, you're literally gonna murder me. I don't know if there's such thing as a right guy for this, but I'm definitely not a vegetarian. Quit babbling. Your lies won't deter me from that sweet, sweet play button. They still give those out? I grant this vegetarian to you, Tofu! Get the piano, Dolly. What the hell? Where's all this blood from? Have you ever lost a best friend? A childhood one at that? There's something so profound that two kindred share with one another, especially one that dates back for so long. And when your childhood friend changes for the worst, or is taken by eternity, either through natural causes or malicious causes, they take a chunk of you with them. Before we get started, I wanted to make a quick shout out, very quick. Last video I mentioned somebody made this Friday night funkin' remix song featuring the game Faith, but also featuring me in it as well. Since then, I know of two people who have made actual input charts for the Friday Night Funkin' game. So, big shout out, not only of course to Ahloof for the amazing sick remix, but shout out to CosmicOwo and junebutcooler as well for those inputs. Now, on to the video. I want to first make clear that this video, as are all my videos, are love letters to pieces of media that I love. This video being a love letter to the movie Jennifer's Body. We will be dissecting and appreciating various aspects of the movie that may have been overlooked. But this should not be mistaken as the ultimate appraisal and interpretation of that movie, or the prime essay to beat all essays regarding Jennifer's Body. This movie has affected me and moved me in profound ways, but it may move you in profound ways that are different from how it moved me. So, if you're interested, after this small intro, I highly recommend you give it a watch, if you haven't already. Jennifer's Body is a horror movie with elements of black comedy, but a specific kind of black comedy, a mixture of deadpan and also irreverent cultural parody. It stars Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried as the lead roles. When it was first released, many people thought it was going to be a raunchy gore fest, and because of this expectation, a lot of people left the movie theaters pretty disappointed. We'll get into that later in the video. But over time, this movie has been reappraised. People are realizing that it's this masterful balance between parody of the youth culture at the time, yet at the same time, oddly accurate as well. Depicting youth culture in both a hilariously stereotypical way, but also in a grounded, accurate way as well. And I'm sure to the discerning eyes, the thrills in this movie also turn the tropes on their head, irreverent to the horror genre itself. You see, this movie doesn't have much of a kill count. It's very lackluster in that regard. The blood, the gore, the viscera, a lot of it happens off camera. This movie chooses to be cruel in a much more unique way, in my opinion, a much more chilling way. As I've revisited this movie since my early teenage years, I've come to believe it's about time that this movie enters its next stage of reappraisal. We will be discussing the pitfalls and struggles of youth and many of the ways that young people fall through the cracks and into the jaws of predatory people. Some of you might find these stories to be a bit too relatable or a bit too on the nose. Perhaps at this moment you don't feel like digging up those emotions. If that's the case, please don't be pressured to watch this analysis. It'll always be here on YouTube whenever you want to come back to it. One more thing, this is kind of an unorthodox content warning. The movie itself does not depict sexual abuse. However, we are going to draw some symbolic parallels to sexual abuse, to the cycle of abuse that gets started and just all the different consequences that come with that. Again, if this isn't the right time for you to be delving into these kinds of topics and experiencing these kinds of conversations, by all means, you can always come back another time. Now, without further ado, let's get right into the video. The movie starts after all the events of Jennifer's body. We see our main character in a psychiatric asylum. Next to her, we see a cup of water and medication. Hanging and laying on the reinforced window are 4 yarn crafts. These are likely a votive craft, typically referred to as Ojo de Dios, or in the indigenous Huichol referred to as Tzikuri, meaning the eye of God. The base of the sacramental is a wooden cross, and yarn of various colors is weaved across each arm of the cross. Our main character is also surrounded by cute stuffed animals. Well, butter my biscuit. We're not even 10 seconds in and we already have some cool stuff here. So, we've got Needy wrapping these cross-shaped Ojo de Dios and with these stuffed cute animals. So keep this affinity with the cross shape and affinity with woodland animals in mind. As the camera pans down, we see a picture of letters. Our protagonist flexes that she gets more letters than Santa Claus, Zac Efron, and Dr. Phil combined. Alongside these letters and even more stuffed animals, we see a wooden cross, a baseball mitten, a bunch of saint figures and other various religious paraphernalia, and even what looks to be a wedding ring from perhaps a proposing obsessor. It looks like our crazy protagonist has a bit of a fan club. An orderly walks in to remind our protagonist, her name now revealed to be Needy, that she's missing out on precious rec time. Again, she's weaving another Ojo de Dios. She responds to the orderly saying gracias instead of gracias. We don't know much about Needy at this point, but I'll jump the gun here and say this is more of a Jennifer-ism, Jennifer being the best friend of Needy and the namesake of this movie.
Gracias, Raimundo.
Needy gets ready by putting on her jumpsuit, revealing scars. She mentions that some letters are from people trying to evangelize her, see her convert, or accept Jesus as her savior. She says she prays, but nothing ever happens. Nobody comes back, and finally, nobody gets off the cross. There's that cross symbolism again. We also see the camera pan into a photo of who we will come to learn is Needy's boyfriend, Chip, his fate being tightly bound to her current fate. Needy joins her fellow patients for some pseudo-outdoor recreation. We see a scene of Needy hitting a tetherball and it flying off the pole. Now, I guarantee a lot of you on your first watch interpreted this scene as the hospital having crappy equipment. However, it is a more subtle hint of Needy having the ability of super strength. Keep an eye out for more of these preternatural hints in this asylum sequence. Needy's now in the cafeteria, and evidently from her sparse tray doesn't have much of an appetite. Her narration ruminates on the orderlies using rec time as a way of wearing the patients out, keeping them docile. She says, those JV tactics won't work on me. Again, this is another Jenniferism. We see aspects of Jennifer bleeding into Needy at this late stage of the movie chronologically. We see a shot of an intake form for Needy. Her full name is Anita Lesnicki, Needy being a nickname. Some of the notes account grandiose notions, hallucinations, uncontrollable fits of rage, and has put several orderlies in the hospital. Triple underlined, we see a single word, kicker. We'll get an explanation of this very shortly. An orderly mentions to Needy that a single toast and pop-up doesn't provide sufficient nutrient. Perhaps she should choose some more food for her tray. So Needy chooses violence.
recommend you shut the fuck up.
All right. Whoa, check out that cafeteria food. Are those bacon and egg and cheese burritos done the Aki way? Chicken tendies and french fries? Damn, man, I'm about to check myself in. Notice the speed and distance Needy makes with a single kick. Sure, this is a movie and things are dramatized for effect, but watch as two larger orderlies struggle to restrain her, one of them being pushed against the wall. Mind you, this is all taking place at the end, chronologically speaking. So we have Needy displaying super strength. One thing I just realized too is that she's not wearing any glasses in this sequence. Something has cured her astigmatism. She's speaking a lot like Jennifer, using words like JV, gracias, and cursing a lot, saying the F-bomb. And overall, her appetite is just odd. It seems like she's fasting or abstaining from something more substantial. Keep all of this in mind, because once we get into the real meat of the movie, you're going to realize that Needy doesn't have any of these qualities, at least before her asylum arc. They finally get a hold of her and drag her to solitary confinement, where we see some more cross symbolism on the floor, but this time in the form of an X-shaped cross, instead of a T-shaped cross. Needy assures us that she wasn't always like this, that she used to be normal, but since the events of the movie, she's been loose around the edges. An interesting phrase I've never heard before. It brings to mind the seams of a garment falling apart. Wait, hold on. There's this music that starts playing, and it might just sound like some, Muzak, but it's actually a Muzak cover of Through the Trees, a pop song by the fictional boy band Low Shoulder. This song plays a vital role in this story, and a little bit of a symbolic pit stop we will make as well. Needy mentions that she effing hates this song. We'll find out why soon enough. And so concludes the Asylum prologue. So, going into the movie, let's keep all of these interesting traits in mind, and let's keep an eye out for some more of this cross symbolism. Jennifer's body takes place in the sleepy town of Devil's Kettle, their catchphrase being, "Come see what's cookin'." The town is named after a waterfall, but specifically a phenomenon that takes place at the bottom of it. The water makes its way down to a whirlpool, the whirlpool being the Devil's Kettle. We see some scientists throwing plastic balls into it to see if they come back up or exit someplace else. But that's the mystery and phenomenon about the Devil's Kettle, is that things go in, but nothing ever comes out. This is the Devil's Kettle. It seems that nothing ever comes out of this place or exits from another place when it passes through here. An aquatic Rubicon, if you will. That which of when something passes, there's no going back. A never-ending cycle, if you will. Keep the Devil's Kettle whirlpool in mind. We see a shot tracking up to Jennifer's house. Jennifer is picking a sore and looks very tired. She seems to be watching an exercise infomercial featuring a hunky man. She's writing inside what we will find out to be her yearbook. We then see Needy watching her from the window. Needy's narration comes back telling us that Jennifer didn't always look this rough. What we are seeing here takes place before the asylum, but after all the main events of the movie. But now is when we get to the true beginning, the chronological beginning of the movie. The movie's timeline begins with what looks like a school spirit rally. Needy looks proudly at her best friend's flag performance. They wave at each other, and as Needy's gaze lingers, the non-diegetic soundtrack, as in the soundtrack that's playing that we hear, but it's not actually happening in the movie. The non-diegetic soundtrack's lyrics say, "You are the girl I've been dreaming of." The subtlety of this hint breaks with a classmate accusing Needy of being, and I quote, lesbi-gay.
You're totally lesbi-gay.
What?
Lesbi-gay. No thanks, I just ate. Now, this is something that gets hinted at a lot throughout the movie. Needy having romantic feelings for Jennifer, the feelings, however, being bottled up from already being in a relationship with Chip and not wanting to ruin the friendship. Perhaps they should be lovers instead. Bam, 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 bam. That's a deep cut. Good song, but a deep cut. This makes the ultimate cruelty of this story's plot all the more cruel. We aren't just losing a friend, but a crush. Jennifer meets with Needy at her locker. Their nicknames for each other is Monostat and Vagisil.
Hey, Monostat. What's up, Vagisil?
You and me are going out tonight.
Both brand name medications for the female genitalia. And that's funny. I wish I was that clever. I wish me and my friends came up with that. How's it hanging, Cialis? What's up, Icy Hot? Icy Hot. Ouch! In all seriousness, I really love the dynamic that Jennifer and Needy share in these early scenes. It's just very realistic and just very endearing and fun, and I just love how childish and sophomoric the humor can be. Jennifer tells Needy about a hot little indie boy band named Low Shoulder playing at the local dive bar. Jennifer seeks to bag a band member and assures Needy that she could also bag a morsel as well, ignoring that Needy is already in a committed relationship. Also note that she refers to men or boys in the context of sex and attraction as morsels, things to be consumed. Needy says she already has plans with Chip, and Jennifer replies, "Boo, cross out Needy," drawing an X with her finger. And there's that cross again. A little bit of a sort of spell, I think, takes place here. Magic or not, a little bit of Kendrick pouting from Jennifer, and then eventually Needy relents. Jennifer says she'll pick her up at 8:30 and tells her to wear something cute. She gives a very flirtatious look at Needy. And hold on, notice how she's placing the necklace in her mouth when she's giving this flirtatious look. Keep this necklace in mind. We will soon find out that this necklace is a heart-shaped BFF necklace. Or biff, as Needy likes to say. The next scene cuts to later that evening. Needy narrates to us that when Jennifer says, "wear something cute," she means to not look boring, but not cute to the point of where Jennifer is being upstaged. Now, these are high school students. They're allowed a sort of level of toxicity. We shouldn't define them as a whole by these moments. That being said, this level of control over another autonomous individual who is supposed to be your best friend is a bit of a red flag. Chip and Needy banter about Jennifer and this indie boy band. I won't go over the conversation play by play, but I do want to point out that Chip isn't written how most characters are written in typical horror movies. In fact, you can really say that about all the characters in this movie. Chip isn't a D-bag or pretentious. He's okay with Needy not knowing who Phil Collins is, and isn't overprotective of her, being okay, albeit a little uncomfortable, with her dressing up for this musical excursion. He's definitely one of the more flawed male characters, having a couple of sus moments, but nothing like how you would normally see in a horror movie. He's decent, has some sweet moments, and some problematic moments. But I do think that he does a puppy love Needy. I'm not sure if the word love is appropriate in this case. Before things get a bit too premarital, Needy senses that Jennifer is here. Chip is skeeved out by this, and the way he says, "That's so effing weird."
Jennifer's here.
How do you know?
Needy, quit tampooning yourself and get down here.
That's weird.
It's in a way that makes it seem like this isn't the first time it's happened, like it's a common occurrence. Chip laments that Needy does everything that Jennifer tells her to do. Needy rebuts that they just like the same things and have loads of stuff in common.
That's why we're biffs.
That's why they're biffs. She brandishes that heart necklace. Chip disagrees, however. How much the friendship is genuine and how much is toxically propped up is going to be something we ponder on throughout this movie. That being said, keep this heart-shaped BFF necklace in mind. There's a reason why we are introduced to this necklace, like upfront and explicitly, right after a conversation between Needy and Chip is regarding, the efficacy of their friendship. Their friendship is being questioned, and immediately after we get this. I think it's the movie telling us that this necklace symbolizes the bond that Needy and Jennifer have. We're not going to really get a concrete instance of this symbolically being relevant until the end, but I wanted to mention this now. And let's go back to that scene in front of the Larkers when Jennifer has the charm in her mouth as she charms Needy into ditching her plans with Chip. It's almost as if Needy's heart rests in the hand of Jennifer, or in a more foreshadowy sense, the heart rests in the jaws of Jennifer. She's feeding on the heart of Needy, just as she will be feeding on the hearts of her victims in the movie. Spoiler alert. They meet Jennifer downstairs, and Jennifer brags about having the car till 11:30. And sizes up Chip, and she's pretty intimidating. She says it stinks in here and ponders as to whether or not the lovebirds have been getting busy. Needy laughs and playfully shoves her. They both playfully shove each other, saying, "You're gross, no, you're gross," until Jennifer pushes Needy into the wall and says, "F you, you're gross."
You're gross.
You're gross. You're gross. It's so gross. Fuck you. Let's go to the club.
Melody Lane is not a club, it's a bar. In fact,
Needy is visibly put off by this, and combine that also with the cold demeanor Jennifer says, "Let's go to the club." There's a bit of a toxic underlying to this friendship here. And Chip doesn't pick up on this, instead just criticizing the skeevy venue Jennifer is taking Needy to. Jennifer says that he's jello, or jealous. He keeps roasting the venue. She then says,
You're totally jello. You're lime green jello and you can't even admit it to yourself.
Needy and Jennifer get to the bar. Since they are both below the drinking age, they're marked on their right hand with an X. This is to signify that they can be there for the musical event, but just can't order any drinks. But there's that cross again. As they walk through the bar, Craig, a jock, interacts with Jennifer. Does he catcall her? Does he make a sexist comment? No. He nervously scratches his head and can barely get out a compliment. Again, a refreshing take on the depiction of a high school student. Jennifer jokes to Needy out of Craig's earshot, pointing out that he's probably in remedial math because he's dumb enough to think that he has a chance with her. Only she's a lot more mean when she says this, using the R word. Keep this meanness of Jennifer in mind. Again, these are high school students. They're teenagers. They can be mean. They can be petty. They make mistakes. But when we appraise Jennifer's character at the end of the movie, we want to equally weigh how she was before transformation and after transformation. So far, we have a bit of a manipulative streak, some evidence of rage or anger, at least some physicality that comes from that, and an overall meanness, or as the kids these days would say, problematic. Again, like I said, these are, all intents and purposes, these are kids. So I don't say this to villainize Jennifer, but to help focus us when we truly analyze the cruelty and nuanced narrative that this story will be painting for us in Jennifer's transformation. I'll say this now, though. Most of us outgrow our toxicity, at least a lot of it. I'm no therapist, but I wouldn't be surprised if traumatic events hinders one's ability to outgrow said toxic traits or bad behaviors. Perhaps if trauma is bad enough, it could even calcify and magnify said flaws and toxicities. Needy scans the room and notices Ahmet, a foreign exchange student from India. Jennifer crassly ponders as to whether or not he is circumcised, saying that she always wanted to try sea cucumber. Needy appropriately responds with an ew. This is a subtle bit of foreshadowing, however, Jennifer wanting to try or eat something in relation to Ahmet, specifically a sexual organ, so keep this in mind. A sleazy ROTC MFer saunters up to the girls. His name is Roman. Based on the beer he's holding and the fact that he's in the police academy, tells us this is an adult talking to high school students. Based on some banter him and Jennifer share, it seems they've had relations in the past. This is a dark but all too realistic of a story. This creepy townie that pervs on the local high school girls. The band Low Shoulder starts setting up. Jennifer gazes at them while Needy's a bit more pensive. I'll make a more detailed note of this soon, but notice the moon-shaped tattoo on the lead singer's neck. Jennifer wants to approach the band, but Needy thinks it's a bad idea. Jennifer tells her to stop being so JV and refers to the band as morsels, encouraging her friend to use the power of her femininity. And there's that use of the word JV. This is what I was referring to when I said this was a Jenniferism. The way she refers to the band member as morsels, things to be consumed, she emits this confidence in her ability of seduction. And while we may first interpret this as a Casanovian girl boss moment, this paints a sad picture to me. The horrible situation she'll be forced into shortly is a result of these band members taking advantage of this confidence. I can't help but feel this is an all too common story. When we're young, we understand the stranger danger, and we could even appreciate the caution adults teach us. And yet we might think that because we're more exposed or more experienced, it makes us more mature and more capable, more confident in ourselves in handling dangerous or risky situations. It's good for the youth to be precocious, to be strengthened, but this hyper-confidence from this overexposure is something that predatory people, I think, are all too eager to exploit. It's the reason why, historically speaking, you're so mature for your age is such a common phrase used by these predators. But I digress. Jennifer and Needy approach the band. Jennifer wields that starry-eyed fangirl persona masterfully, while Needy asks why the band would go out of their way to perform in such a small town like Devil's Kettle. The lead singer explains that the band likes to reach out to fans in remote towns, even the poopy ones.
Not the poopy ones!
But I'm not buying that explanation. Something is up. Jennifer goes to buy them a drink, using her charisma to charm her way past the drinking age limitations, and really? That's new. Meanwhile, Needy is at the pinball machine. She overhears the lead singer and bassist pondering about the virginity of Jennifer. She's able to hear this conversation all the way from the loud pinball machine. So, on top of this BFF telepathy, pre-asylum Needy seems to also have a sort of preternatural heightened sense, just all around heightened senses. For some reason, this band is concerned with finding a virgin groupie. Now, on your first watch, this can be chalked up to a creepy people's obsession with taking somebody's virginity, but we'll come to find out that their true intentions are of a different sinister nature. What's interesting is that Needy is able to hear all of this from far away, near noisy pinball machines. So on top of her psychic tendencies, she also seems to have keen hearing. She confronts the band members, offended that they're speaking so crassly about her best friend. She tries to defend her friend by saying that she might be a virgin, but it beats sleeping with creeps like them. From the perspective of adults, virginity is fetishized. Yet, from the perspective of the teenagers, virginity is something to be ashamed of or be embarrassed about. This is one of the more visceral mind F's I can recall as a young person, specifically when this movie came out. We live in a society. Needy intercepts Jennifer on her way to the band members. She's holding the drinks. Their conversation confirms that Jennifer isn't a virgin, one of her accounts confirming that Roman being one of her sexual partners she's had in the past, confirming that guy is a scumbag, to say the least. The show starts before Jennifer can get them their drinks. Let's break apart the lyrics of Low Shoulder's song, Through the Trees. This song tells the story of Jennifer's body very well, and I want to really appreciate it. All alone in an empty room, nothing left but the memories of when I had my best friend. I don't know how we ended up here. I don't know, but it's never been so clear. We made a mistake, dear. And I see the broken glass in front of me, and I see your shadow hanging over me. It's a good song. Now, this can foreshadow the end when Needy is alone in a solitary confinement with nothing but the what-ifs and regrets of how her best friend was stolen from her. Perhaps even before her friend was taken, the broken glass was always apparent, and her friend had been hurting all this time. So there Needy sits, all alone in that empty room, with the guilt in the form of the shadow of Jennifer haunting her, reminding her of the things she could have done differently to prevent her cruel fate. And the chorus, through the trees, I will find you, I will heal the ruins left inside you. And I'm still here breathing now, until I'm set free, go quiet through the trees. These lyrics will make more sense when we get to the very end, after the Asylum saga. I like to think it's a foreshadowing to a triumphant healing. However, I do want to point out that the title and chorus, Through the Trees, it gives us a very subtle motif that we can apply to every kill that Jennifer makes in this movie. Through the trees, boom, boom, I will find you. I will hear you. We will be keeping this motif of trees in mind. And a side note, keep that waxing moon tattoo in mind. The one on the neck of the lead singer. The song is very touching and emotional on its face, taking me back to the angstier time of junior high or freshman year. It gives me similar vibes to the phrase, how to save a life. The music seems to have Jennifer under a spell, and it even seems to stir something in Needy also. They link hands and Needy gazes at Jennifer, but when realizing the attention Jennifer is paying to the lead singer, her grip loosens. In a way, this mirrors a scene we will see very shortly. She's seeing her friend be pulled away from her into the grasp of this band, and suddenly an electrical fire starts. We will come to find out the fatality of this fire soon, but we will get confirmation that the shy jock Craig perished in the fire, and that Ahmet actually survived the fire. That strange scene of debris falling on him being a fake out. He will still be included as a fatality, but you'll see what I mean soon enough. The fiery carnage persists, and Jennifer seems to be still in this perpetual state of enthrallment. Her best friend saves her from the fire through this smart escape through a window in the bathroom. But you can see that Jennifer is still strangely dazed. Before we go further, I want to ask the question, who started the fire? It could just be that it was the band that started the fire. After all, they benefit the most from the diversion, from the chaos that ensued. However, it is interesting to think that when the two BFFs with slight romantic crushery involved, when they locked hands, that some sort of fire, passion if you will, magical kind of situation ignited the fire. An emotional fueled magic, BFF witchcraft magic, or it could have been just Ryan who was trying to microwave heat up a cheese pita. Needy and Jennifer are safely outside the burning bar. Just as Jennifer seems like she's going to regain lucidity, the lead singer intercepts the BFFs, giving Jennifer a drink, tipping it into her mouth. Perhaps there's something in this drink to maintain the dazed state of Jennifer. However, the lead singer does take a couple of sips as well. The source of Jennifer's condition still perplexes me. I think the easiest explanation would be it's some sort of spell Low Shoulder has on her. We will see a similar ability of enthrallment get wielded by Jennifer later on in the movie. He convinces the dazed Jennifer to get in his van. Needy tries to reason with Jennifer, but Jennifer tells her to shut up. Needy sees the van door shut on Jennifer, making this the final moment Needy laid eyes on her BFF before her transformation.
I watched her get into that van and I knew something awful was going to happen. He was skinny and twisted and evil like this petrified tree I saw when I was a kid.
This dingleberry atop the crap sundae takes the form of the lead singer Giddy Grimace. F that guy. The actor did a great job, but F that character. Jennifer isn't safe. Our minds immediately know what's going on. For Christ's sake, it's a van after all. I remember on my first watch of this movie, I thought that Jennifer was going to be sexually abused. And even watching it again for the second time as an adult, having already watched it for the first time, my brain thought the same thing again. Seldom can a movie fake you out twice. And yeah, spoiler alert, it's a fake out. Well, a misdirection, a red herring. We'll get into it. Nonetheless, even though we'll find out in a literal sense that she won't be sexually abused, keep this theme of sex abuse in mind, or just in general, the theme of abuse in mind, symbolically speaking, because there's a larger symbolic story at play here. Needy makes her way home to an empty house. Her mom is on swing shift. As far as I know, she has no father and no siblings. She calls Chip, describing the brutality of the Melody Lane fire and Jennifer being kidnapped by Low Shoulder. Chip asks what make and model a van was, but Needy doesn't remember. Chip doesn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation, being more concerned about the dead rather than the in danger Jennifer. But even if he was as worried as Needy, what could they possibly do? Who could they possibly tell? One of the questions you may be shouting as you watch this movie is, where the hell are the adults? Both Jennifer and Needy are raised by single parents. We know that Miss Lesnicki has to work swing shifts in order to maintain the household. And here we have this perfect storm, or in the theme of the saying of Devil's Kettle, the perfect stew, if you will, for a horrible situation for the youth. An economy that requires parents to spend less time with their kids, less time teaching and raising and loving their kids, validating their kids. And a culture that speaks out of both mouths when it comes to things like sex. The youth are made to feel like outcasts, socially inept, losers if they're not sexually active. But then if they are sexually active, even in any sort of manner, they are then shamed. This mind F would be unfair to even apply to adults. There's something oddly diabolical that it's applied to kids. There's so much pressure. Perhaps there's a lot of social pressure put on the parents, and thus the parents divert that pressure onto the kids. I'm rambling. But all of this stuff is just like packed into the experience of young people. Predatory people like those in the band of Low Shoulder would have a lot harder time acquiring victims and evading justice if this strange situation didn't plague the youth. People aren't present to give wholesome validation to Jennifer during a very important moment of her life, or important time of her life, and so she seeks validation from absolute crap bags like Low Shoulder. And Roman, the police cadet. When Jennifer gets kidnapped by Low Shoulder, Needy has no adults in the vicinity to tell what's happening to Jennifer. It's not even like an instinct for her. It's like they're used to just being stranded. That is not even an option for them. That's conjecture, but, you know, where's the gabagool? Perhaps one of the broader prime cruelties of the movie Jennifer's Body is it tells the story of children, and I don't mean that to be patronizing. It's as an adult, it's like, they're just children, they're kids. It is a story about children forced to raise themselves. It's like Lord of the Flies out here. Needy hears the doorbell. She investigates to find nobody, then ending her call with Chip. A jump scare fake out later, and Needy is face to face with Jennifer in the kitchen. The camera doesn't linger too long, but keen viewers will notice a large wound in her torso, a hint as to what befell Jennifer that fateful night. She smiles creepily, then goes for the fridge to start eating a rotisserie chicken. She's just like me for real. Needy tries to talk to Jennifer, but Jen lets out a demonic, guttural screech, then begins to vomit black carnage that emits these pulsating needles on whatever surface it attaches to. There's no doubting it now. This movie has a supernatural element to it. Remember Needy's BFF empath skill set? Well, she rolls a d20 for detect alignment and rolls a crit. When she's holding on to the arm of Jennifer, she detects something evil is lurking within her BFF. This scene is easily overlooked, but it does help confirm a sort of preternatural instinct that Needy and Jennifer share with one another. She flees in terror, running not away from Jennifer, but from what occupies her. But the evil within Jennifer comes for Needy, cornering her. Jennifer seems to grope Needy, asking her if she's scared. Then, just as it seemed Jennifer is about to bite into Needy's jugular, she pulls away, throwing Needy viciously into the doorway frame, leaving into the night. This is an early development of the sort of post-transformation Jennifer's MO, starting with some aspect of physicality or seduction, then the installation of fear or hopelessness, and then finally feeding on the victim. I feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface with this scene. We look at Needy, she survived, but she's on the floor sobbing, defeated. Right after this scene, she's gonna scrub, trying to make clean what was sullied in the kitchen. And despite this night being insane, like just being full of red flags coming from Jennifer, we'll see Needy recontextualize, not necessarily forget, but recontextualize and rewrite this night in her head and push things to the side. I don't want to say that Jennifer symbolically abused Needy in this situation. I just think that this is the way the movie is going to depict and front-load violence in this movie. It's not gore violence. It's not rip-roaring, action-fueled violence. It's something a bit more visceral. It's something a bit more vulnerable and real, I guess. Now remember, this is an analysis. This isn't meant to replace the actual watching of the movie Jennifer's Body. So in order to have as clear a picture as possible, we're going to go over what happened to Jennifer that fateful night. This isn't revealed until a flashback 1 hour into the movie. The events just happened, but we'll be grabbing a scene from later in the movie. Does that make sense? It's not the proper way to watch and enjoy the movie. However, it'll be our key in unlocking the truly dark and cruel overarching story of Jennifer's Body. Let's rewind to directly after the fire. So after Low Shoulder drives off with Jennifer in their van, they take her to a forest. Think back to the title of the song. They are going through the trees. Jennifer notices the satanic books and paraphernalia and panics, thinking that they plan to sexually abuse her. One of the band members asks the lead singer if she's even a virgin at all. Jennifer, naive to her horrid situation, still thinking that these people are interested in sex, tells them that she is a virgin, that she's probably not even good at sex, and maybe they should find someone who is. Sadly, this is exactly what the band Predators are looking for. This goes back to that virginity dissonance I mentioned before that the youth have to go through. The van stops and Jennifer makes a futile attempt at escaping. Note her somewhat powerful kick. The lead singer grabs her, restraining her. The lead singer then makes note of the waxing moon. He verbally notes, just like the ritual says. Note, this is the same kind of moon that is depicted on their tattoos. It looks like that they are following some sort of cult tradition whose insignia have to do with the darkness through the trees and the waxing moon. Just in the same way that the song Through the Trees had Jennifer under a spell, we'll see that song have the entire community under a spell, but of course our keen needy sees right through it. I'm getting ahead of myself. They set up Jennifer for sacrifice near the Devil's Kettle, the watery vortex beneath the waterfall. The bassist shows some hesitation, but the lead singer tells him that if they want to be rich and famous, like the guy from Maroon 5, that they need to go through with this. Jennifer tells him that they don't have to do this. The lead singer explains that it's hard to make it as an indie band these days. He says that Satan is their only hope, and if they want to be in league with Satan, they have to make a big sacrificial statement. This is a really heavy scene, but Jennifer's response is just pure horror dry comedy genius. She says,
"Why don't you just get a publicist? We can make t-shirts. I can be a part of your street team, please."
Sorry, no can do.
Not only want to make it big the easy way, but also the evil way. And the way these guys are getting a kick out of it just shows the pure evil they're committed to. The lead singer admires his knife. Keep that in mind for the parallel I'm going to be drawing in a quick moment. He repeatedly plunges it into Jennifer, singing and cackling alongside his bandmates while Jennifer screams. Jennifer's death is signified by a bright light flashing on screen. Remember, this is a flashback. It's a telling of the story from Jennifer to Needy. So Jennifer states that she should have died that night, but evidently the ritual didn't kill her. Needy responds, maybe it did. We return to the flashback. The lead singer is breathing heavily, staring down at the dead Jennifer. He's holding the knife toward his groin. He wipes the blood onto his jacket and throws his knife into the Devil's Kettle whirlpool. We will come to find out that although the ritual itself was successful, because they didn't sacrifice a virgin, the demon that they were beckoning will enter Jennifer and bestow upon her dark powers to continue the cycle of pain. The knife itself is a phallic symbol. Without being too graphic, it entered and exited Jennifer repeatedly in a violent manner. But when it enters the whirlpool, it does not emerge, it doesn't exit. What if this scene is depicting sexual abuse? Yes, on its surface it's ritual abuse, but what if it's depicting sexual abuse? Perhaps the abuse itself literally ends, just as the murder ends, but the means of which the abuse happens is perpetually in this sort of cyclical suspension. To be more clear, the abuse itself may literally end, but the effects and the essence of the abuse stay relevant for the entirety of the victim's life. Just like the Devil's Kettle, this evil act is a Rubicon. It's passing a point of no return. Again, I want to reiterate, notice the circular, cyclical nature of the whirlpool. I think this symbolizes the cycle of abuse. And because of this cycle that is initiated by Low Shoulder, we're going to see Jennifer re-perpetuate this cycle as we typically do. It wouldn't be a cycle if it kept revolving. And we're going back to the whole concept of the knife being a phallic symbol, it being in the sort of Devil's Kettle. This is going to sound very silly, but I'm 100% serious. In the beginning of the movie, we see scientists throwing plastic balls into the Devil's Kettle as a means of testing out, like, where are things going? Are they escaping? You know, it's a science experiment. So at this point, literally the two things we see go into Devil's Kettle is a phallic symbol and literal balls. You might think this extrapolation is silly, but keep this in mind for a later scene. What commences after is Jennifer coming to life, going to Needy's house. The events we just witnessed a moment ago happens. Then Jennifer notes in her account she couldn't bring herself to hurt Needy. So when she pulls her teeth away from Needy's neck, that was Jennifer intervening. So after she flees from the Lesnicki household, she finds Ahmet. It turns out he survived the fire. She asks him if he's lost. If his host family or anybody knows that he's still alive, he shakes his head. And she leads him through the forest, through the trees, to consume him. Sorry in advance if I did a poor job drawing Ahmet's patka. Patka being the tradition of wrapping one's uncut hair, employed by young men who follow Sikhi or Sikhism. It's kind of interesting, actually. There's a lot of religious theming in this movie, and it shouldn't just end with Christian themings and pagan themings. I do find it interesting that the one comment Jennifer makes about Ahmet as to whether or not he's circumcised, And perhaps it's not an accident. This character is sick, and his patka is a signifying of uncut hair. It's okay. That's an extrapolation. That's an extrapolation if I've ever made one before. But it's interesting, right? She's wondering if, he's cut, and he has his patka, which is a symbol of keshdari, your uncut hair, your kesh. All right, yeah, okay. It's an extrapolation. I look like a fool. But shout out to all the sick homies. We just went over a lot of information. Let's take a little bit of a mental health break, and we'll get right back into it. And speaking of mental health, I'd like to thank our first sponsor of this channel, ButterHelp. You didn't see that one coming, did you? During these unprecedented times, in this current situation, mental health is very important. But what's really more important is a good diet. And the good folks at ButterHelp want to remove the stigma of consuming fats. The good folks at ButterHelp are saying no to hustle culture, and even no to bustle culture. And with your help, no to Russell culture.
Russell Trussell is a widely known eco-terrorist responsible for planting Ahloof plants on public property without the state's consent. Viewer discretion is advised.
I'm on the phone with my ButterHelp associate. Hey Grant, is it true that you want to put the butter on the stove before the pan is on the stove or after the pan is on the stove? You need to put the butter away. Russell will be coming for you any moment. Turn the stove off. Put it away. You, tell him to get the hell out of there now. Download the app on the Floppy Store today and use promo code 2 tickets to the lemon party for a free stick of butter with your first order. Julian says that ButterHelp is the prime app for all things butter related. And remember, everything's butter with better. ButterHelp. Rest in peace, Ahmet. He is officially Jennifer's first kill. Let's not go any further and go back to the next chronological moment in this movie. But remember, Needy doesn't find out about any of this until an hour into the movie. After a sleepless night of cleaning up the mess Jennifer made, Needy sits in class ruminating on the simpler times of her and Jennifer's childhood. But note, in this flashback, we see Jennifer wanting to play as the pretty doll and have Needy play as the ugly doll. Then we see Needy vowing to not tell Jennifer's mom that she'd pricked her finger. So we have further reinforcement of this dualistic nature of their friendship, competition, and loyalty. Perhaps in this flashback, when Needy treats Jennifer's puncture by sucking the blood, they inadvertently become a sort of, blood sisters. This being the start of a kindred faith, sealed with a vow of secrecy. Her flashback is cut short by Jennifer saying, "Where's it at, Monistat?" She looks far better than she did last night, and I'd even wager better than she did before her sacrifice. And when I say better, really what I mean is more resplendent. Her skin is brighter and her hair is more voluminous. And now we know that this is the case because she had just recently consumed Ahmet. She feeds this evil and keeps this cycle going, and in return she gets surface boons that mimic the cosmetic standard teenage girls were held to at this time. In the following conversation, Jennifer is being particularly hostile, saying that Needy's recount of last night is an overreaction, being dismissive and callous about the small-town tragedy, and being petty about Needy's surface flaws. The way Needy shows her dirty nails as a way of non-verbally communicating to Jen what she did to clean up her mess and how it affected her is very well done. This is one of the many ways that this movie gets the more realistic depiction of the social world of high school right. Maybe I'm dwelling a bit too much, but I just think it's a very cool bit of nonverbal dialogue. A teacher, played by Just Kidding Simmons, solemnly walks in with a hook for a hand and a strange burn scar on his neck. I want to know this guy's story. He lovingly addresses the students and does his best to help them process everything. He mentions that they lost Ahmet to the fire, but we know that it was Jennifer that killed him. And look at when he mentions Ahmet the way Jennifer grimaces. An interesting hint that likely all of us didn't notice on our first watch. He says, "We can't let that fire win," and Jennifer whispers through a giggle, "It already won." The teacher says, "God bless you kids," noticing Jonas weeping over the loss of his best friend Craig, the jock we saw in the bar. I want to take this moment to explain why I love this movie so much. I like movies that depict very real and dark situations, but the characters are soft, sappy, highly humanized. In every other focus group that concocts horror movies, they have to write the jocks as stupid knuckle draggers, girls as ditzy, dumb, especially blonde ones, goths as either pretentious or malicious, nerds as weak. You get what I'm saying. And listen, to an extent, I think formulas are fine. They work, they do their job. I'm not here to censor anything. They don't even necessarily hinder the movies that they're applied to. But you get to a certain point as a horror lover that you get tired of just seeing the same dance of seeing an unlikable character get propped up just for them to get brutally and disgustingly get murdered, and we're just supposed to clap for the violence. That's not why I like horror, believe it or not. In this movie, disregarding the outsider's low shoulder, every character, every member of this community is lovable, relatable, real, if not full-blown lovable, at least to some extent humanized. There's this porcelain sheen, I think, that covers a lot of characters in fictional media these days, and I love it when a piece of media or a movie shows humans as the vulnerable, soft, emotional creatures that we are. It reflects our humanity better, and because it does that, the stakes are that much higher, and it makes for a fantastic means of storytelling, especially in a horror setting. It's that much scarier, that much more high stakes. Remember, this is a small town. A tragedy like this has the whole school shaken. The whole world seems to stop spinning, with all the after-school practices and activities being put on hold. Needy tries to explain to Chip what happened last night, but he's not getting the strangeness and severity, suggesting Needy see the counselor. Again, this is what I meant by Chip's sort of flawed nature. He is very dismissive against Needy's worries. A goth boy by the name of Colin Gray intercepts the couple to show his joy that Needy didn't perish in the fire. They are partners in their creative writing class. This next shot is my favorite shot of the movie. We get some heavy metal playing as a tracking shot zips through the field and through some football equipment and settles on the solemn face of Jonas. I never experienced loss like this in high school, and yet I can't help but feel like this is just perfect. The overcast, the wet grass, aimlessly gazing at the fields you and your kindred once used to play on. It reeks of that true and pure angst that all too commonly has been reduced to "shut up, Mom" in common media. Shut up, Mom! Jennifer catches Jonas's eye as she approaches distally from the left, only to startle him from his right. You can even see Jonas's confusion as he looks back to the left. Jennifer appeals to the morning jock, telling him that she was the last person to speak to Craig, and lies about how he said that they would make a banging couple. The idea tickles Jonas. Jennifer places his hand on her chest, saying, "Feel my heart, Jonas. I think it's broken." Does Jonas say, "Let's make out," or "Wow, you're so hot," or "Ooh, booba, honk honk"? No. In response to her saying that her heart is broken, he holds back tears and says, "Me too." Every opportunity to both director Kusama and writer Cody have to reduce and dehumanize these archetypical characters is forsaken, and in replacement we see a very raw and emotional take on the archetypal jock. Now let's move on before I waste more time appreciating this novel storytelling. Jennifer leads Jonas through the trees just like she did Ahmet, and things look like they're about to get premarital for the bangin' couple. But Jonas is skeeved out by the surrounding woodland creatures. We see a dire doe, a dire beaver, some dire raccoons, but no dire wolves. Seriously, Jennifer? You got an army of demon animals, but no dire wolves?
Bring me a dire wolf. Bring me a dire wolf. Bring.
So we have an interesting mirror. Jennifer's motif is a crossing out of the X and demonic woodland creatures, whereas in the asylum sequence, when Needy, her motif is T-shaped crosses, the association with the eye of God, and cute, cuddly, in a way pacified little animals. It seems that whatever Needy had achieved by the end of the movie, in a way pacified and cleansed whatever Jennifer had plaguing her. And I'm jumping the gun here. We'll see that in a very empowering way, she almost makes this curse, makes it her own. I really am jumping the gun there. We'll move on. Jennifer says that Jonas is about to see Craig soon. He asks, what, like in heaven one day? She shakes her head in a sadistic grimace. How many times did I say the word grimace this video? And pushes him toward a tree. We see her face transform into a maw, and Jonas is brutalized off screen. Through the trees, I will find you, I will heal the ruins left inside you, and I'm still here breathing now, I'm still here breathing now, I'm still here. Go quiet through the trees. I mean, the fact that the band members are a bunch of sex pests, you know, they say separate the artist from the art. I prefer to separate
the head from the artist in this case.
Was that too much? She first seduces him, lulling him into this false sense of security. And keep this disturbing thing that Jennifer implied in mind. She implies that Jonas's friend Craig is not only in hell, but he will be joining him soon. She's instilling this fear in him, this hopelessness, which will become very relevant in the next kill onward. And then she ultimately kills him. We have this three-step thing: seduction or physicality, hopelessness, and then the ultimate victimization. Jennifer's MO on its surface is your typical horror slasher MO, but I can't help but feel that these ingredients are also very much present in sex abuse, or even just sexual violence. Keep this in mind, and also let's take inventory of Jennifer's possible powers. So, Jennifer has the power of mental domination, at least to some extent. She is either very fast or can teleport, has super strength, and has the ability to transform herself to allow her to eat people alive. The teacher from earlier hears Jonas screaming from the forest. He interprets this as Jonas mourning for his fallen friend, saying, "Let it out, kids." But because these characters are silly on the outside but very well written on the inside, the teacher reveals himself to be far more keen and wise than the average horror character, and immediately senses something is up. While he wanders in the forest, Needy is making herself a sandwich, listening to a radio broadcast. On the radio, Low Shoulder is doing an interview using the tragedy to advertise their new album. The teacher finds Jonas's mangled body in the forest, a deer eating the insides of Jonas. In a twisted juxtaposition, the next shot is of Needy dropping one half of her sandwich and a cute cuddly ferret nibbling at it. Needy's mom joins her at the table, likely waking up from sleeping after a long swing shift. Needy's mother mentions a nightmare she had, where Needy is being hunted by an angry mob, that they were trying to nail her to a tree, or in other words, a cross, just like JC. JC meaning Jesus Christ. With the cross spells, woodland themes, mysticism, and now this allusion to a mob trial, there's this very light witchcraft framing into a lot of this movie. But keep the dream of persecution in mind, because it's going to play some light foreshadowing to Needy's ultimate fate. We already kind of saw it with the asylum intro. We cut back to the police and coroner handling Jonas's body. Jonas's parents are beside themselves. We will see how brutally his mother is affected by this senseless tragedy in an upcoming short scene. Later that evening, Needy gets a call from Jennifer. Jen is celebrating how invigorated she feels. Needy isn't impressed because she's still processing the fire at Melody Lane. Jennifer tells Needy to move on, calling the tragedy a white trash pig roast, saying that it would be more appropriate for Needy to be happy that her best friend is having the best day of her life. Needy gets an incoming call. Jennifer tells her to blow it off. Needy picks up anyways, and while she's on the other line, Jennifer crosses her out.
Other line, hold on.
So blow it off.
It'll just be a minute.
Pooh. I'm crossing you out.
Chip asks Needy to come over to tell her about what happened to Jonas. While Needy is on the other line, Jennifer is burning her tongue with a lighter. This shows another power that Jennifer has, regeneration. But this theme of self-harm is also something that gets revisited. Self-harm is sadly common among young people who have undergone traumatic experiences. And while in this case it's framed as Jennifer flexing her superpowers, I still think that there is some parallel, at least symbolically. Needy gets back to Jennifer, saying that she's gotta go. Jennifer randomly states, "I am a god." Needy is confused but says that she's gotta meet Chip at the park. Before they can say bye, Jennifer tells Needy how cute Chip has been looking to her lately, asking about his private physicality. Needy doesn't take the bait and hangs up. Needy will be remembering this comment, however. Needy links up with Chip. The police are at Jonas Kozel's house. Chip tells Needy that he heard that Jonas was ripped limb from limb and had bite marks along his body. This doesn't entirely match up with the scene that we saw of the body's discovery, perhaps a bit of small town gossiping. He talks about the catatonic state Jonas's mother is in. We get a very short but absolutely gut-wrenching shot of Miss Cosell. It's an effing nightmare. A waking nightmare. Every parent's worst fear. Their children dying before them. The cycle of pain is well and alive in this town because of the actions of Low Shoulder, but also the perpetuation of Jennifer. We'll get into that. Needy brilliantly makes the connection between the fire and the murder of Jonas, but to everybody else, including Chip, it's going to simply be interpreted as a town going through their spat of really bad luck. The naive small-towners thought, it can't get any worse, can it? What commences is a compilation of shots with Needy's narration. The school seems less colorful, everybody's gloomy and numb, but there's Jennifer, resplendent in this pool of suffering. Needy notes how the world has become obsessed with Devil's Kettle, calling it a tragedy boner. The song Through the Trees is playing while this scene goes along at the chorus. We see some students holding a candlelight vigil singing Through the Trees. The band that sowed the evil that has ravaged this town gets to have their song be the anthem for the very town they ravaged. And I won't lie, it's effective. The same way the tracking shot zoomed into the mourning Jonas now approaches the memorial shrine of Jonas. Seeing the flowers wilt as time passes is seriously effective. Even knowing the sinister nature of this song, it still has all the ingredients of a song that's perfect for a mourning teenager. And I won't lie, this scene does choke me up a bit. I guess I just really like Jonas. He's just a big cute teddy bear. I feel like any of the kids in this movie, if I had kids that were like them, including Jennifer, I would be proud of them, And so like, I don't have kids of my own, but like, it's just like, yeah, it's just like you don't know until you lost someone, It's just, it's a sad movie. It's actually a very sad movie. I mean, like starting with Jennifer being, I'm rambling. Eventually, the color is restored to the school. People are smiling and embracing one another. Needy narrates, like Chip, we thought things could only get better. We had faith. We were effing idiots. A month passes. Needy and Jennifer are in class when the hook-handed teacher announces that Low Shoulder would be donating a whopping 3% of the proceeds of Through the Trees to Devil's Kettle. Needy is vocal about her disdain against Low Shoulder, openly lamenting the falsity of the rumor that they saved lives the night of the fire. Class is dismissed. Needy vents to Jennifer about how much she hates that song.
I'm already sick of that song.
Yeah, it's really poorly produced. Could the bass be any lower in the mix?
It seems any discussion of Low Shoulder causes Jennifer to retreat and be deflective. Despite her power, albeit waning in this moment, her abusers have a distressing effect on her. Again, humanizing the victim within Jennifer, the now victimizer. Needy notes that she doesn't look too good. Jennifer laments that her hair is less voluminous and her skin isn't as perfect, like she's becoming one of the normal girls. In the hallway she mentions, maybe it's wearing off. Needy presses her on what she means by this, and Jennifer does that thing that people do where they drop something cryptic, and when you're like, what the F are you talking about? They just smirk. They're just like, you wouldn't understand. Colin Gray, the goth guy from earlier, shoots his shot with Jennifer. He asks her if she'd like to see Rocky Picture Horror Show with him. She says that she doesn't like boxing movies, which is freaking hilarious.
I don't like boxing movies.
Yeah, but it's not a fucking boxing movie. Fuck it, okay. Forget it.
Flustered, he gives up and walks away. Great. Oh, this is so funny. Needy cuts Colin some slack. Jennifer decries his taste in music and nail polish, Needy says. Well, I think he's cool. Jennifer's competitive nature rears its head, but this time with the full force of malice behind it. Needy has a sweet spot for Colin, and I wouldn't be surprised that if she wasn't with Chip, she would even be interested in him. Jennifer seems to identify this, and in spite of Needy, or to make her jealous, she accepts the date with Colin, saying that she will text him her address. This only cleanses Jennifer's palate, because when she turns around to see Chip talking to Needy, Jennifer identifies another target and greets Chip, like, hi Chip. But Needy, remembering what she said that night on the phone, pulls him in for a kiss. Jennifer loses interest and moves on. Needy and Chip discuss their date later that night. And by date, I mean they get busy. Now, I'll give them their privacy. But while they're having their date, Colin is looking for the address that Jennifer gave him. It's so nice to see this gloomy goth boy get all chipper, listening to music that would mess with his goth street cred. He's in a good mood. He got the date with the pretty girl. He finds himself in a neighborhood of half-finished houses. You can see the suspicion creeping up on his face, but he keeps himself excited. He enters the unfinished house where he is to meet Jennifer for their date. He gets startled by crows. Remember, these animals are an omen of sorts, a sign that Jennifer is ready to feed, and they're going to eat what she leaves afterwards. It's almost like Jennifer makes a kill, feeds off of this kill, and the rest is like an offering for this demon that emerges through the trees. I'm creating lore. And although he isn't technically going through the trees, the unfinished home has exposed lumber, rendered trees. He finds a candlelit room with a CD player playing romantic R&B music. Jennifer startles him. He puts together that this isn't her house. She immediately starts seducing him. He gets startled by some more animals, this time rats. She mocks him for being scared of rats, that goths are supposed to like decay and vermin. Her eyes transform. He immediately realizes he's in trouble. Backing up, he pricks his hand on a tool, and she grabs his hand and snaps it. "I need you frightened," she says. While Needy and Chip are at it, Needy sees a vision of blood seeping through the ceiling. She then sees a vision of Jonas and Jennifer smiling at her. Jennifer then pounces on Colin and says, "I need you hopeless." She casts a shadow, showing her jaw unhinge into a maw as she begins to feed on poor Colin. Needy repeats the word hopeless, then audibly cries. The vision fades, and after some tone-deaf dialogue from Chip, their special night is cut short. Meanwhile, we see Jennifer feeding on Colin's corpse, while rats crawl around. It's also worth pointing out Chip's obliviousness while him and Needy are having sex. To us, Needy is clearly in distress. However, Chip is only hearing her. He's focused on performing. And so he's interpreting this audio or the sound of her crying as sort of cries of pleasure. And this is, again, speaking to his character flaw of obliviousness, but in this case, it's particularly distressing because it's in the midst of sex. Needy sets to the road, and I'm not sure where she's heading, if she's seeking Jennifer or just going home, but it seems Jennifer seeks her instead. Jennifer pounces on her car, smiling with a creepy, bloody visage. The suspicions Needy had about Jennifer were correct, and the situation is far more dire than she could have ever imagined. Needy makes her escape home. She lies alone in an empty room, thinking back to when she had her best friend. It's the song. She then ruminates on the moment she saw Jennifer before being kidnapped by Low Shoulder. She calms down and heads back to her room to turn in for the night. Jennifer suddenly startles her from under the covers. Needy freaks out. Jennifer downplays what happens and calms her down, and they begin to make out. I'll give them their privacy. I think now is the best time to go into a little bit of an anecdotal history lesson regarding the marketing of this movie. I must have been in 8th grade or freshman year when this movie came out. At the time, Megan Fox was beloved. People thought she was sexy and she had a lot of star power, especially with all the Transformer movies and whatnot. And I even recall people being excited to see Amanda Seyfried as well. So this makeout scene that was teased in the trailer had a lot of people bricked up, ready to watch a bloody, raunchy, sexy, gory horror movie. Now, Megan Fox is very pretty, but I wasn't into her like that. I was still very excited for this movie because it looked bloody, it looked scary. I was very excited. I wanted a big kill count. I wanted to be scarred. And while I'm sure a lot of people left the movie theater because there wasn't any booba, I was more disappointed with the lackluster kill count. Obviously, as an adult now, I appreciate the movie for its brilliance. It's not meant to follow a formula, but just simply to tell a story. A great story at that. But alas, it was still mismarketed. I imagine some focus group thought, well, we got some pretty hot talent. Let's, market this movie. It's going to be a very soft core. And so naturally, a lot of hormoned, hopped up people that were my age at the time were excited to see this movie. But a lot of people, not a lot, a small amount of people, and this is something I just need to get off my chest. There's a very small amount of people who lament the mismarketing of this movie, but they tend to blame the kids that were marketed, or in their words, the horny teenage boys. And it's we don't choose to go through that. When we go through that part of life, we don't get to choose that. But you know who had a choice are the adults in the executives that most likely mismarketed this movie. After a brief visit to Makeout Reef, Needy pulls herself away, dropping her first chronological F-bomb in the movie. Remember, the narration is taking place after everything has unfolded, so the previous narration F-bombs don't count. Needy freaks out, considers calling the police, but Jennifer just makes it clear that she wants to finally tell Needy what's going on. What commences is the flashback sequence we went over that details the events of the ritual sacrifice. This is the point where Needy and the viewer discover that Jennifer was ritualistically sacrificed and not sexually abused. Jennifer proves to Needy that she's unkillable by stabbing herself with a sharp object. And I won't show it, but it's another parallel theme to self-harm. And it's very fitting that she shows this act after recounting a traumatic experience, much like one would open up about the self-harm after recounting being abused to a trusted confessor. Jennifer says that as long as she's full, she can regenerate, but Needy presses her on what she means by full. And then Jennifer realizes how much she shared and falls back on gaslighting Needy again. It's not working until she mentions Chip, mentions how he might be having second thoughts about her. And I'm sure Needy knows this to not be true, simply a deception, but that's still a very raw subject, a low blow if you will. So this upsets her. So she demands Jennifer to leave. Jennifer offers to play boyfriend-girlfriend like they used to, but Needy does not relent. Jennifer promptly jumps out the window and flees. This takes us to the burial of Colin Gray, where his goth friends make a scene, and his mother, holding the same rosary that Colin died with, gave us one of the most masterful combinations of solemnity, anger, and badassery. I won't go into the whole dialogue, but she finishes with, "So you can take your pain and you can shove it up your you-know-where, because I've got the monopoly on pain." Also, take note of what looks to be orchids on Colin's casket. So that's kind of interesting, right? There's this theme across all of these kills of trees being present, except for this one, which is like rendered trees, lumber. Nonetheless, this orchid that we see on the resting place of Colin will play a symbolic role. We'll see it come about in a few other scenes. So keep this orchid in mind. Have a horticulture going on in there. Horticulture? Yeah? Something like that. What's that smell? Ahloof samosas. Oh, hold on. Oh, an Ahloof samosa plant. Amazing. I didn't know they still made these. Oh, this one has the pit still on it. Oh, what's wrong with this? Beef? Oh no! Needy's narration hints that the community was numbed, perhaps even desensitized, establishing buddy systems and curfews in a very matter-of-fact manner. Needy does some research regarding the occult in this school's library. Yeah, that's how you know that the parents are absent in this community, the fact that the school's Dewey Decimal System accounts for demonology and it hasn't been torn down by the PTA. It isn't explicitly stated yet, but Needy learns that when a virgin is offered as sacrifice and the victim turns out to not be a virgin, the beckoned demon will inhibit the body of the victim. And based on the success we see Low Shoulder go through, it seems that their wish list still gets granted. She also mentions a blade to the heart to slay the demon. So the same way that Jennifer was victimized is the same way she will be liberated from the demon's hold. Sadly, we'll come to find out it's just not that simple. You'll see what I mean. Needy goes on a reclusive autopilot, not really speaking to anybody for quite some time, until Chip tells her that he bought her tickets for the formal dance. He asks if she made reservations to the Cheesecake Factory, another gem of a line bringing back memories of simpler times. Needy informs Chip about what she's learned about Jennifer's predicament, lamenting that the upcoming formal will be an all-you-can-eat boy buffet for her. Needy tells Chip that it's not safe for them to be together or go to the dance as a couple. Chip doesn't buy any of this and is more upset that they are no longer together in the official capacity, saying that he even bought her an orchid corsage. There's that orchid again. we'll be keeping this orchid corsage in mind, a little bit of a foreshadowing of a doom that's about to come about. It is kind of interesting too, like orchids being a symbol of the dearly departed. It is interesting that we're now suddenly seeing these orchids rear their heads symbolically in the story as we reach its ultimate requiem. Now that was pretentious. She tells Chip that she will be at the dance to keep an eye on things and that Chip needs to stay home. Needy is likely worried that Jennifer showing interest in Chip means that Chip is in her sights. And I'm of the mind that this would have been a good call if Chip had only taken her seriously. We fast forward to the night of the spring formal. Both Chip and Needy take their pictures. Chip's mother hands him some pepper spray in case he is accosted by the boy-hungry cannibal. Jennifer is brushing her hair. Clumps of her hair fall out into her hand as she gazes at her tired visage in the mirror. The mirror is flanked by 2 pictures of Jennifer depicting her before she was ritualistically abused by Low Shoulder. She applies foundation to hide her imperfections as tears well in her eyes. Again, we must realize that Jennifer's youth has been robbed of her. This moment we see the victim that resides within the victimizer. Not to downplay the evil acts that she's committed, but to understand the depth of the cruelty that is the cycle of abuse that she finds herself in. Needy makes it to the formal, but she can't seem to find Jennifer. Meanwhile, Chip decides to walk to the spring formal, cutting through the park. We see Jennifer phasing closer and closer to him, distally behind him. Chip hears his name being called and turns around to see nobody there and is startled by Jennifer, who is now in front of him. This manner of dumbfounding her prey is not dissimilar to how she approached Jonas at the fields. Jennifer says that they need to talk about Needy, about her strange behavior, feigning concern for her well-being. Jennifer leads Chip through the trees, albeit a small group of a few trees, but trees nonetheless. She lies to him, telling him that Needy had been cheating on him with Colin Gray before his death. He doesn't believe her at first, but she gets more graphic and detailed in an attempt to whittle Chip down to a vulnerable state. In this state, she can insert herself as the shoulder to cry on. Speaking of shoulders, the hook-handed teacher announces Low Shoulder's surprise performance at the spring formal. While Jennifer and Chip begin to kiss, we see Needy giving a truly moroseful death glare at the horrid boy band. I wonder if Needy's worry of Jennifer going on this feeding frenzy at the school dance actually came to fruition. How would it have turned out with both Jennifer and Needy being surprised by Low Shoulder's appearance? Would Jennifer want to enact revenge against her abusers? Based on what we see in earlier scenes where she withdraws when Low Shoulder is brought up, part of me thinks the last thing she wants to face are her abusers. Thus is one of the pistons of this cycle of abuse, because the victim is too scared to face their abusers, to retrieve power from their abusers. Not even scared, they just maybe don't even have the means or are able to do it, like even just logistically speaking. She reclaims power by victimizing new victims, thus keeping this cycle of abuse spinning and spinning and spinning in perpetuity, ultimately maintaining the cycle. You'll see what I mean soon enough, if you haven't already. Among the trees, Jennifer asks Chip to compliment her while they make out, even asking him to say that she's better than Needy, revealing the deep need for not only validation, but to one-up her best friend. The BFF telepathic connection kicks in. Through Jennifer, she feels the kisses of her boyfriend Chip. She realizes that Jennifer has made it to him. The music swells masterfully. Despite the boy band being a group of scumbags, the track does a good job at setting the strangely solemn urgency of this situation. Jennifer takes Chip to an abandoned building near the park. While Needy runs to Chip's house, Chip's mother informs her that Chip walked to the formal through the park. Jennifer leads Chip to an abandoned pool, and in red spray paint we read the word hopeless, harkening back to how Jennifer needs her prey before she consumes them. Jennifer says that she feels empty. Chip relates to her by saying he does as well, and this sort of reminds me of how Jonas related to her broken heart. She wants to continue kissing, but he's just not in the mood, so she throws him into the pool to begin her feeding. Again, this is kind of interesting. We see this behavior suddenly rearing its head. In facing Chip's non-consent, she is angry. She wants to take what she thinks is hers, despite him not consenting. While Needy is running, trying to catch their trail, Jennifer is toying with Chip, allowing him to escape for a bit, only to drag him back into the pool. Needy finds the corsage, a fitting symbolic orchid, telling us the fate of our doomed Chip. Needy makes it into the pool area to see Jennifer feeding on Chip's neck. Needy asks St. Jude, the patron saint of hopeless causes,
St. Jude, patron saint of hopeless causes, please give me the power to crush this bitch.
Needy jumps in and takes the fight underwater. Chip is clearly dazed, and Needy makes her way back to the surface. Chip's looking in a rough shape. Jennifer rushes from underwater. Chip tosses Needy the pepper spray his mother gave him, and she uses it on Jennifer, stopping her in her tracks. Jennifer throws a tantrum, puking on the lovebirds, then begins to hover above the water. The dialogue that takes place is important as well as hilarious. Chip is amazed that Jennifer can also fly, but Needy says that she's only hovering, not that impressive. Jennifer results, God, do you have to undermine everything I do? She calls Needy a player hater. Needy calls her a jerk, and here is where things get interesting. Needy says that Jennifer was never a good friend, even as kids, always stealing her toys and pouring lemonade on her bed. Jennifer taunts her about how she's now eating her boyfriend, saying that at least she's consistent. Needy makes an interesting point. Why Chip? She could have anybody else. Is it to tick her off, or is it because she's insecure? This riles up Jennifer. She argues, how can the snowflake queen, likely a school dance accolade, be insecure? Needy points out that that was 2 years ago, when she was socially relevant. Ouch. Before Jennifer could finish rebutting that point, Needy low blows, saying that that was also the time when Jennifer didn't need laxatives to stay skinny. Jeez. Jennifer has had enough. She says she's going to eat Needy's soul and crap it out. Needy says, I thought you only eat boys. Jennifer says, I go both ways. Thus solidifying herself as the literally me character that the bi community has been waiting for. Step aside Bob Belcher, step aside Oberyn Martell. Your JV tactics won't work on the spooky, scary Jennifer. In all seriousness, when I was doing research for this video, I was trying to figure out, okay, how much can I get away with, like, with clips? And so I was looking at videos of people, how like they would upload their reviews of this movie and how they got, and YouTube started recommending me like these like compilations, edits, fan cams, if you will, that kind of glorified Jennifer. And at the time I'm like, she's kind of a bad guy. She's kind of like kind of bad. She's kind of problematic in your lingo. But then I realized, you know who else is problematic? Patrick Bateman. That's not stopping a lot of people from making him their literally me character. Sometimes you just need an overall, just maybe a vain, a very confident, in a brash way, character to just sort of be like, they're just like me for real. I get it though. I get it. It puts a pep in your step. Jennifer doesn't really do it for me. Patrick Bateman doesn't really do it for me. But Danny Cho from Beef, he's literally me. Like hella. Jennifer darts toward Needy, and Chip counters by impaling her with a metal rod, just a few feet short of her heart. Again, we see Jennifer getting stabbed by what looks to be a phallic object. And if you think I'm reaching, look at where it emerges relative to Needy's body. Now, when I made that initial relation to sexual abuse in Jennifer's Sacrifice, it made sense. We were tying a string from the literal ritual abuse to the symbolic sexual abuse. It isn't hard to reframe these creepy bandmates of Low Shoulder as abusers. But then what does that say about this scene, this pull scene with the spear? It's an obvious phallic symbol. Chip is holding it near the waist of Needy, just as the phallic symbol of the knife was held at the groin of the lead singer. But the literal scene is of Chip and Needy defending themselves, rightfully, against Jennifer. I don't think symbolically Chip and Needy are abusing Jennifer. The literal situation is just simply self-defense, but I still think there's something profound going on here symbolically, even though it isn't sex abuse in this case. Think about it. Out of all the victims of fatal violence in this movie, 3 times it happens to a female, all happened to Jennifer. So we've seen 2 so far, the knife and the pull spear. And we haven't gotten to the 3rd instance yet, but all of these instances have this symbolic sexual abuse kind of theme to it. Even though I don't think Chip and Needy are abusing Jennifer, I think what this means symbolically is that Jennifer can't escape the way that she was initially abused and victimized. Every time she's going on a rampage and she gets sort of punished or feels the consequences of said perpetuation of the cycle, it's in the same exact way she felt it. I mean, not exact, but in a very similar, identical way to how it was when she initially was victimized, when she initially got dragged into this cycle. Remember, she's a kid. It makes this all the more tragic. It's easy to throw your popcorn at the screen when adults do heinous things. I sure as shit did it with Low Shoulder, but in my opinion, it just doesn't feel right to get overindulgent in bloodlust and wanting the demise of a evil teenager, especially when each time echoes the initial victimization of said villain. Chip falls over after exerting himself, and Jennifer is stopped in her tracks. She pulls the rod out from her abdomen and shares some banter with Needy before fleeing in defeat. Chip and Needy share their final moments. He apologizes for not believing her. He tries to calm Needy, understanding his hopeless situation. He says that he's sure that he died before she got there, but came back after hearing the sound of her voice. They proclaim their love for each other and share some loving banter before Chip dies. And ship all you want, but I think Chip and Needy were good for each other. I would say much better than Jennifer and Needy would have been if they had been together. Later that night, Needy cleans herself up and gets into her demon hunting stealth fit, the same fit we see her in the window of Jennifer's room near the beginning of the movie. We see Jennifer laying on her bed, watching the paid programming with the hunky man on it. We are back at the scene toward the beginning. Now knowing what's going on, we can surmise that this paid programming is Jennifer's version of the Food Network. Jennifer is scribbling in her notebook, circling boys she plans on consuming and writing no on those she isn't interested in. She circles one of the pictures and writes yum, likely marking her next target. Interestingly enough, you can see scribbled area where a picture should be. This might be that the person missed their picture day, or based on what looks to be orchids, it could be that it's one of her victims who died before picture day. I can't make out the list of students, so I don't know if it's Ahmet, Jonas, or Colin. Needy ambushes Jennifer, failing to hit her with what looks to be a hammer. Enraged, Needy tries to choke out Jennifer, calling her a monster for killing Chip, calling her a dumb B-word. Jennifer pulls Needy in and takes a bite out of her. We can even see she gains a bit of strength from this. Needy pulls out the box cutter. Jennifer tries to swat it out of her hand. Needy says,
You know what this is for? It's for cutting boxes.
And thus we have our third weapon, a box cutter. You might be thinking, okay, thanks Needy, thanks for that tool tip. I already knew what a box cutter does. You didn't have to explain it to me. Well, yes, it's a box cutter, and as she says, it's used for cutting boxes. But during the time of this movie's release, box was another word for the female nether regions. It was a slang word. So Needy was calling Jennifer the C word in this instance. And so think about it. And this is going to be a dark extrapolation. I mean, truly dark, because it's coming out of the mouth of Needy. She's spelling out for us the use of the box cutter. Yes, like its traditional use is cutting boxes, but the slang box is for genitals. Making that connection in this taunting joke. She's calling her a C word, like she's literally spelling out for us. Even though the box cutter isn't a traditionally phallic symbol, that whole concept is replaced by Needy spelling out to us. I'm trying to like dance around it because it is a effed up, extrapolation. But understand that this movie, again, is very much a black comedy. So it's like much of this effed up darkness is hidden underneath the horror, which is hidden underneath the black comedy. So things fizzle up, and then it makes its way through, creating these black comedy situations. The movie's not making light, of course, of sexual abuse, but you can't ignore the fact that the whole premise is a victim of sexual abuse. So it's the comedy makes its way through because that's what it is. It's a black comedy. But let's take inventory. We have the knife, a clear phallic symbol, shape-wise and everything, held at the groin of the lead singer of Low Shoulder. We have the pull spear, again, a phalanx shape, a clear phallic symbol, and it is at the waist of Needy, near the groin. Obvious, phallic symbology there. And then you have the box cutter. While not penis-shaped per se, a very crass joke is made about it cutting boxes, another word for the genitals. Jennifer, despite all the pain she's caused, can't escape that initial victimization, even her last moment, her demise, I wouldn't wish that on bad people. Listen, I mean, it's like she can't escape it. There's an argument that evil needs to be neutralized, stopped in its tracks, all that stuff, but not like this. Not like this. And it's like, it's this constant bouncing from victim, victimizer, 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 then victim, and then it's like it has to stop. The cycle has to stop, and it's up to Needy to stop that cycle. Jennifer makes fun of Needy, calling her a butch for using hardware tools as weapons. Needy says, cross out Jennifer, deflecting Jennifer's own spell back at her in a way, slicing an X into Jennifer's stomach. This pisses off Jennifer. She hovers, and they both fight each other in the air. I want to point out that just for a moment, there is a shot where Jennifer makes a face and noise that is more akin to a romantic encounter rather than a fight to the death. And I only point this out because I want to paint a full picture as to what I think the significance is about this final standoff symbolically. In a way, violence and sex have merged together in Jennifer's mind because of her plight. Being seen perhaps as a sexual object throughout her life, and her ultimate end, I guess both of her ultimate ends, her first violent end simply being the result of her seeking validation from the lead singer of Low Shoulder. The things that people may have been jealous of Jennifer were the things, or are the things, that predatory people covet. It's a story that's all too common. And this story is telling the story of teenage girls, but I can think of some males, teenage males that in my time when this movie came out, that also had lives that were highly affected by this just horrible situation, this mess, if you will. Being hyper-exposed and seeking validation through sexuality, the pain that comes from that may look different for teenage males, but it's still there nonetheless. And it's why, even though, again, this is a story that I can't one-to-one relate to, it's all the more, it just speaks to me on a very profound level. I mean, I'm rambling. Again, I'm rambling. I apologize. Let's keep this concept in mind, however. Once Needy gains the advantage, she notices the BFF heart necklace on Jennifer. The demonology book says to stab the heart, but perhaps to weaken Jennifer, Needy attacks the symbolic heart. She yanks the necklace off of Jennifer. The kindred link between them is severed, and the way Jennifer falls from Needy, while Needy remains hovering, is very interesting. Needy has decoupled herself from Needy, but Jennifer is still a part of Needy. Hint, hint, it has to do with the bite. Needy descends upon Jennifer and stabs her in the heart. Jennifer's last words are, "My tit." Needy responds, "No, your heart." And Jennifer dies, and her mother comes in to see her daughter murdered by Needy. The pain seems to not end. Needy lays beside the deceased Jennifer while Jennifer's mom mourns the death of her daughter. We then cut to Needy's stay in solitary confinement after kicking the orderly in the beginning of the movie. Somebody places a plate of meat in her room. She catches its scent almost in like an animalistic nature. She narrates that she doesn't know who Needy Lesnicki is anymore. She has become the kind of person who uses swear words, kicks orderlies, and sees things that aren't there. She calls herself a very bad and very damaged person, and despite that, she thinks that some change can be good, revealing that if one survives the bite of a demon, they inherit some of their powers. That's the last we hear of the inner voice of Needy, and she finishes her thought by verbally telling us, the audience,
"You just might get lucky for once in your miserable life."
She says this in such a way that it seems like she's quoting Jennifer, but I can't recall Jennifer ever saying this, at least in the uncut version of this movie. Above the X on the floor, we see Needy hovering, revealing the extent of her powers. The meditative pose brings to mind the lighter side of mysticism. She floats high enough to get to the level of the window, kicking it through. She walks through the chain link fence and escapes the psych ward. On her journey, she finds a small creek. In the water, she sees two plastic balls, the ones the scientists used on the Devil's Kettle whirlpool, and the weapon that was used in the sacrifice of Jennifer. 2 balls and a phallic symbol. Now my penis obsession isn't so crazy after all, is it? Before this point, the cycle of the whirlpool had held things in suspension, not allowing anything to escape its grasp. But now it seems the cycle is broken, and Needy is given the means to right what was wronged in Devil's Kettle. And so, the whirlpool cycle isn't the only cycle that's being broken tonight. Keep this in mind. She gets picked up hitchhiking and asks for the driver to take her east, saying she's following a rock band and tonight is going to be their last show. In case you didn't know what she was talking about, we get to see a sign warning drivers about a low shoulder. A low shoulder, when it comes to commuting, means that the side of the road has a decrease in elevation. But it's also the name of the antagonistic rock band, Low Shoulder. I've mulled over what the symbolic significance of the band name Low Shoulder is, and honestly, I think it's just making fun of how dumb some band names can be. Like, just take anything that has to do with driving or commuting and then just put like a random noun behind it, you know? Like car seat, headrest, streetlight, manifesto, radio, head. Speaking of music, we have a song that's very symbolically rich. A song Whole by Violet. The line, "You should learn when to go and you should learn when to say no," it's commonly interpreted as an external voice, victim blaming somebody. I think these could also be words of advice. The power of the word no and being able to enforce your boundaries. This doesn't apply wholesale to all victims, but the youth is conditioned to never question adults, never say no to adults. They don't learn a sense of dignity and self-security so that parents preserve their command. Some can relate to being raised to never question their parents, who might be severely emotionally damaged themselves. And when you teach a kid to follow the lead of a broken person, they won't know how to break free from another broken person they meet later in life who may have ulterior motives or just be all around toxic and damaging. Another line of the song is, "They get what they want and never want it again." This line comes in specifically when the band members are enjoying themselves in their hotel room. Their story began with seeking to take the body of a virgin, and now they got what they wanted out of it, and they have moved on to other ways of indulging themselves. We see some shots showing the moon tattoos on the band members, just like how Needy and Jennifer wore the cross on their hands in the bar. The band members' sigil is that of the moon, and our BFF sigil is that of a cross. Sadly, we don't get to see on camera these crap bags get what's coming to them, but we do get confirmation that each of them get folded like a lawn chair. We also see the lead singer stuck with the sacrificial knife. The final shot is of Needy walking away from the hotel room, phasing through a gaggle of fans. And so concludes the movie, Jennifer's Body. Was that the bite of 87? I feel that every movie tells 100 stories. For Jennifer's Body, at least for me, 2 stories stuck out to me, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. The story of the loss of the best friend and the cycle of abuse. We'll start off with the loss of the best friend, the loss of the friendship. We see Needy lose Jennifer 3 times throughout the movie. When Jennifer gets kidnapped by the band, that moment where we see the van door close on her, the last moment Needy sees her before her transformation, was the first time that we lost Jennifer. And then later on in the movie, about an hour in, when Jennifer confesses to Needy what's been actually going on, the violence and what she went through and how she's been coping with it by, continuing the cycle of pain, the mental image, the idealized Jennifer, dies in Needy's mind. And finally, the last time Needy loses Jennifer is when Needy finally kills Jennifer in that final showdown, losing her best friend once and for all. Let's go back to when Jennifer was confessing to Needy. She says something around the lines of, "I should be dead, that ritual should have killed me." And Needy responds with, "Maybe it did." Before this point, we see Needy mentally obscure any sort of red flags or evidence that may point to Jennifer being an assailant. She knows, she senses brilliantly, everything has to be connected. And in her kitchen the night of the fire, she senses something profoundly dark lurking within Jennifer. I think subconsciously she could have easily put 2 and 2 together. She put other 2s and 2s together, but I think she was running interference mentally for her dear kindred. I'm speaking from personal experience here. When you have a kindred link to someone, I'm talking it's going back to the sandbox, childhood BFFs, your brain will straight up Photoshop memories, run interference for every red flag and misbehavior that this person may commit. You give this person more passes than any reasonable person would. And as such, Needy, I think, deep down knew something was up, but operated as if Jennifer was perfectly fine. Likely out of a combination of fear of upsetting her and just fear of her. But that might be a bit of a projection on my part. We see Jennifer using that BFF leverage to get Needy to cancel plans she already had with Chip, even demanding that she blow off a call from Chip so that she could continue bragging about how good she felt. Whether intentional or not, Jennifer, on a subconscious level, knew how much Needy loved her and was willing to leverage that love. And again, these are teenagers. I almost can't blame her for this. Needy was the only source of wholesome validation in her life. It's hard to vocalize a sense of loneliness when everybody sees you as hot and popular. You are seen only for your status and your body. And so Needy was really the only person who saw Jennifer for who she was. And while before her transformation, that would have been a beautiful thing that Jennifer absolutely loved about Needy, after her transformation, that sort of see-through-me kind of thing becomes a liability. And thus, Jennifer starts to gaslight and intimidate Needy in order to kind of get her, off her track, even going so far as to make veiled threats about Chip to Needy. But these egregious things that I'm describing take place after Jennifer's transformation. These vague toxicities that we see Jennifer exhibit, while probably enough these days to get someone absolutely ostracized, in my opinion, as a teenager, I think it's understandable. It happens. Despite having a deep sense of loneliness and seemingly having this uphill battle regarding her lived experience as a youth and the mental health struggles that come with that in this part of modern age, I think Jennifer had the gumption, the deep self-security, underneath the insecurity, the deep sense of self-security to overcome these flaws. And I think she could have grown into being a beautiful and loving person. Sometimes it takes being in a dark place to bounce to a much more brighter future. But this chance of growth was utterly robbed. I want to use a different R word, but robbed, we'll stick with that, robbed of her. And she's stuck in this body that isn't even hers anymore, has these hungers that she can't even recognize, a mean streak, a desire for pain that are completely otherworldly to her. The cruelty of Jennifer's body, of Jennifer's story, is she starts off as a girl, a teenager that is in this day and age being forced to grow up too fast, and then after her abuse, she can no longer grow up. It's a mind F that is something that's kind of unique to the youth. If this was a story about the transformation of an adult, I would be cutting them a lot less slack. One's victimization is not casus belli for that person to now suddenly start victimizing other people, creating new victims. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but this, I think, is a concept that adults understand. And so when one crosses that Rubicon, gets high off of doing unto others what was done unto them, I have no problem calling that person evil. But I have a lot harder time classifying Jennifer as such. Because when you're that young, you're like, your brain's not developed. You're making decisions that are based on impulses and insecurities and external pressures, but with none of the wisdom of a lived life, a lived experience. And while how much blame and agency we assign to Jennifer, the bad things she did, is a tricky conversation, I think it's safe to say that the deaths of Ahmet, Jonas, Colin, Chip, and of course Jennifer lie on the heads of Low Shoulder. And finally, this takes us to the story of the cycle of abuse. I want to first draw some parallels to another piece of media that I absolutely love, Twin Peaks. Don't worry, we're not going to do any spoilers here. Both feature a cast of lovable characters. You have this external force of evil. In the case of the movie Jennifer's Body, it's this visiting indie band Low Shoulder. Both of these forces, in Twin Peaks and in Jennifer's Body, a cycle of pain is initiated. You then have a person who is a victim of the cycle and then perpetuates that cycle and keeps it going. And of course, in Jennifer's Body, Jennifer plays that role. In the case of Twin Peaks and in Jennifer's Body, both victims turned victimizers are thoroughly humanized. Their story is told in a very tasteful manner, never downplaying the actual evil they commit and the consequences that come from their perpetuation of the cycle. But you're not sitting there wallowing in bloodlust, wanting to see them get what's coming to them. It's just not like that. It's not how the story's told. And then ultimately you have the cycle breaker. And don't worry, this is not a spoiler. This is the very first scene of Twin Peaks, the death of Laura Palmer being the very premise of it. It's a very good TV show. The cycle breaker, of course, in Jennifer's Body is Needy. So let's piece this apart. Remember that phenomenon that Needy discovers regarding the demon inhabiting Jennifer's body? She called it demonic transference. Transference, this word is key to understanding what happens here. When Jennifer bites into Needy, I would argue that this is a form of demonic transference. So let's start from the beginning. Low Shoulder transferred this demon into Jennifer, starting the cycle of pain. Given the symbolic context of there being a possible sexual abuse angle, I would argue this is a cycle of abuse. Jennifer, the victim, is cursed to degrade and lose power the longer she goes without killing and consuming somebody. This, I think, symbolizes how the victim, Jennifer, feeling powerless, feels that the only means of retrieving some semblance of power is to create more victims, thus perpetuating the cycle of pain. The victim becomes a victimizer. What's interesting is that we do get scenes where Jennifer seems to be getting a kick out of these new powers, out of this new role of being a victimizer. That being said, we see her hold this deep, profound hatred for this new version of herself. I want to draw attention to that scene where she's putting foundation on her face, tearing up, crying, sobbing before the school dance. One might argue that this scene is more her lamenting her losing power, losing a surface level beauty, if you will. But I feel like if that was the case, it would be less tears and more of a tantrum, more anger. I think the fact that she's crying, there's this sort of deep regret, and she's almost trying to undo something. Like she's ashamed by applying that foundation to her face, trying to mask this face that just is attached to a body that no longer belongs to her. That's why I think at the core Jennifer hates this. I don't think she's getting a kick out of this. I think it's almost much like she can't live without eating things. You could argue symbolically she can't feel any kind of power without perpetuating the cycle. That's the true evil of all of this. You didn't have to start it. Low Shoulder didn't have to do this. The final transference is when Jennifer bites Needy. Needy kills Jennifer, thus Needy survives the demon attack, and then this demon gets transferred to her through that bite. Now, the fact that this fight takes place in a bed, there's that moment where Jennifer kind of seems aroused. The overall positioning of the fight has a sort of eroticism to it. I am tempted to want to keep this sort of cycle of sex abuse symbolism going, but there's no need to insert that here. It would be an oversimplification of the cycle of abuse. The cycle doesn't have to be re-perpetuated with the same crime. We don't need to force some sort of symbolism of Jennifer sexually abusing Jennifer in that moment. We don't need to, because the cycle has plenty of pain to go off of for Needy. Needy saw her best friend get kidnapped from her by these creepy Fs and was killed, then transformed. Following that transformation, she finds out that her best friend has been killing all these people. One of them is her boyfriend. And thus, this pain, this cycle is concluded with her killing her own best friend. We don't need to force a symbolistic or a symbolic sex abuse thing. That is plenty traumatic. That's plenty for the cycle of pain to keep going. But Needy is the cycle breaker. Remember, none of this would have even been relevant if Low Shoulder hadn't started the cycle in the first place. This is why I bestow upon them the full agency and responsibility of all this happening. Jennifer sort of being this accident in a metaphysical sense of almost like a consequential instrument of the cycle of abuse. But finally, we have Needy, the cycle breaker. Remember how this start of the cycle of pain was punctuated by the knife being plunged into the devil's kettle? And I mentioned the actual cyclical nature of the whirlpool symbolizes the cycle of abuse. If that's the case, then what's interesting is that the cycle is broken It spits out the knife and the scientist's plastic balls before Needy even kills the band members. The low shoulder massacre happens long after the cycle is actually broken. Perhaps it isn't until she truly identifies the source of the suffering, low shoulder, she can forgive herself, she can forgive Jennifer, she can understand this cycle of pain, this cycle of abuse, thus setting her sights on the true evil. When it comes to this sort of mental healing, identifying the problem, identifying the true cause, being able to point to the problem, I think is a big step in the healing process. Healing the ruins left inside you. So, with that realization, the cycle is broken. The means of which the cycle was started, that ritual knife, is spit out, and Needy is able to retrieve it, doing what Jennifer was too wounded to do, and that is take the actual power and retrieve it back from the cycle. The cycle broken, that's our happy ending. It could just end right there, and now we can even consider that a happy ending. But Needy goes the extra mile. It's not enough that the cycle is broken with her. She wants to prevent the cycle from ever being started again. New victims being created, perpetuating new cycles of abuse. So she goes the extra mile and she neutralizes low shoulder. I mean, it's likely that the scene where she kills all the low shoulder members is just for audience catharsis. But I honestly think that, they could have easily wanted more fame, more money. Look at the crazed fans that were going for their hotel room. Who knows, maybe there was the next Jennifer, the next victim in that crowd of fans. Needy, in her actions, taking power back from the cycle, probably saved a life that night. Well, by ending a few of them. But that's just a theory. A Jennifer's body theory. Thanks for watching. Beef! Oh no!
Floppycock versus Dancing Cultist.
You're still alive. So what's a Shirai Ryu anyways? A warrior clan, bound by honor and blood. I can respect that. And by the way, your cock's hanging out. What? Where? Ah! Damn it, it keeps crashing. No one ever told me video editing was going to be this difficult. Oh, it's you! I want you to get this vegetarian demon out of me, and then afterwards, I'm gonna gut you. You're still alive! That means the curse didn't go through. I could stop this charade. I just wanted to be famous and rich. I didn't want to actually do all this work. So you sacrificed me for a dream that you're not even capable of maintaining? Saint Christopher, give me the guidance to... Does he normally do this? I have the power. Actually, no, now I don't have the power. I've gotten rid of the demon and the cult, so now I'm just a normal, regular, meat-eating boy. It was good to finally cover a movie again. I forget how long these take. I have to just re-render a bunch of stuff because the content ID is picking up the movie. I'm very confident that what I did here was transformative. In fact, I think it's going to encourage a lot of you to re-watch the movie. But nonetheless, it took a lot of time to put this together, so thank you all for your patience. This movie is great. There's a lot of different angles you can go about analyzing this movie. I know for a fact I missed many of them. I could have gone more in depth with the feminist framing of the movie. Jennifer mentions the boy-run media, Chip's mother telling his little sister to sit like a lady. I could have gone the historian route. I could have analyzed the cinematography more in depth, maybe where this movie played its role in the grand ecosystem of teen slasher movies. I could have even gone the religious route. There's a lot of religious imagery in this movie that kind of went over my head, I imagine. For example, Jennifer Check's initials are JC. One of the adults' name is Roman. But I wanted to stick with what most profoundly spoke to me. I think when we look up in the skies and we look at the clouds, I can see a frog, you can see a flower, somebody else can see a daisy, but we're not turning to each other and saying, oh, but you missed the daisy. Oh, no, but you missed the frog. That's what is indicative of really good, a really good movie, really good art. And And I can very much imagine a lot of different people were spoken to by Jennifer's body in very different ways. I'm not a smart person, and I'm in no way, shape, or form a scholar. But what I lack in these fundamentals, I think I make up for in passion. And I'm very passionate about the interpersonal story in Jennifer's body, the story of Needy and Jennifer. I think this is a movie that was meant to be appreciated by the people who were young at the time of its release, but it wouldn't be fully appreciated until those people grew up. A delayed release time capsule with no guarantee that the target audience was ever going to come back and revisit it. Maybe that wasn't the intention of the movie, but that was the effect, and I love it for that reason. So until next time, I'll be keeping all of you in mind. Ma'asalama, sudesutun, hasta luego, I'll see you soon.
Bring me a dire wolf. Bring me a dire wolf. Whoa. Bring me a dire wolf. Bring me a dire wolf. Whoa.
Beef! Oh no! Okay.
Can I stop recording?
Yeah.
Beef.
Oh no!